Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're unraveling a truly complex and, well, often poignant subject. The relentless pursuit of justice in unsolved cases. It's a journey into forensic science and criminal investigations that reveals, profound challenges, but also remarkable ingenuity.
Absolutely.
We're going to approach this like a complex puzzle, really systematically understanding the problem, devising a plan, carrying it out, and then, checking our results. A truly Polya-esque look at this world of unknowns.
That's a great way to put it. Our mission in this deep dive is really to synthesize insights from, well, a diverse and challenging stack of sources.
Right.
We've got official reports, academic texts, historical documents, even popular media sometimes.
Okay.
We want to extract those crucial insights into how society grapples with its unknowns, whether that's, say, unidentified human remains or the lingering shadows of unresolved crimes.
Yeah.
It's a multifaceted challenge, it really is, and it absolutely demands interdisciplinary approaches. And by the end, we hope to have helped you, our listener, not just understand these complex questions, but truly, well, desire a solution for them, as Polya might say.
And to give our exploration a human anchor, a narrative thread to follow, we're going to focus on one specific unknown, the mysterious death of Andrew Sadek in North Dakota.
A tragic case.
His case, unfortunately, embodies so many of the challenges and complexities we'll be unpacking today. For this deep dive, we've pulled from crime reports, detailed forensic anthropology texts, and even some historical economic data, trying to set the stage for a truly comprehensive view.
And our goal isn't merely to recount facts, right? It's to understand the underlying mechanisms, the why and how behind the information we have.
Exactly.
And critically, how different types of knowledge intersect to reveal a clearer picture. It directly echoes Polya's understand the problem principle.
Right, that first crucial step.
Which guides us in identifying what's known, what's unknown, and really formulating the core challenge.
So let's unpack this. We can begin with the stark reality of cold cases in the United States. It's an issue that carries, just an immense emotional toll on victims' families and entire communities.
It really does. It's devastating.
And one of the first things that struck me when looking into cold cases is that there isn't even a single universal definition.
That's right.
Why is something so fundamental, so inconsistently defined across different jurisdictions?
Well, it's complicated. Some places define it simply by having exhausted all their investigative leads. There's nowhere else to go, essentially.
Okay.
Others use a time-based metric. It could be 1 year, maybe 3 years, sometimes even 5 years since the crime occurred. For instance, you look at the Metropolitan Police Department of D.C., they have a policy where responsibility for an unresolved case transfers from the initial investigation unit to their major case squad after, well, up to 4 years if no further investigative steps are identified.
4 years.
Yeah, so it's really a diverse patchwork of definitions across the country.
That seems problematic.
It is. And that lack of a consistent definition, combined with other factors, contributes to what, well, you really can only describe as a cold case crisis.
A crisis? That sounds serious.
It is. This isn't just a grim statistic. It's a testament to a quiet, ongoing crisis. We're talking over 100,000 families since 1995 left without answers.
100,000?
Yeah. It's a gaping wound in communities, fundamentally challenging our societal promise of justice. And the numbers, tragically, are only increasing.
So it's getting worse, not better.
It seems so. While clearance rates for homicides are consistently the highest among all crimes, they still remain well below 70%.
Still quite high, but yeah, below 70.
Right. And what that means is, year after year, new cases actually outpace resolutions. They're adding to this ever-growing backlog of unsolved crimes. But, resolving these cases offers broad societal benefits beyond just justice for the victims and their families, which is obviously paramount.
Like what?
Well, it frees up agency resources, lightens investigator caseloads, reduces administrative activities, and can even relieve backlogs in forensic laboratories.
Okay, makes sense.
And perhaps most importantly, solving these cold cases can prevent future victimizations.
Right. Catching someone who might otherwise offend again.
Exactly. Thereby reducing the associated human and economic costs to society.
And that brings us directly to the Andrew Sadek case, which you mentioned is a prime example of these interwoven challenges.
It really is.
So Andrew was a 20-year-old student. He was attending the North Dakota State College of Science in Wahpeton. He went missing on May 1st, 2014, very early in the morning. His roommate, Drew Kugel, was the first to realize Andrew was nowhere to be found.
Right.
And it's important, I think, to understand the geographical context here. Wahpeton is located right on the Red River.
The border.
Which forms the border between North Dakota and Minnesota. So it's in this unique bi-state area.
Yeah.
And here's a chilling detail that really underscores the gravity of the unknowns in this region.
What's that?
The entire state of North Dakota has fewer people than the city of San Francisco.
Okay, quite rural in parts.
Yet it has twice as many unsolved disappearances per capita.
Twice as many? Wow. That stat alone tells you something, doesn't it, about the challenges in solving these types of cases in that particular state.
It really does.
And the immediate mysteries surrounding Andrew Sadek's disappearance were, well, profound from the start.
How so?
2 months after he vanished, his body was tragically discovered in the Red River.
Okay.
The autopsy report confirmed the cause of death was a small caliber gunshot wound to the head.
Right.
Yet, perplexingly, no weapon was ever located despite police diving searches.
No weapon found. That's strange.
Very strange. And adding to the enigma, Andrew's backpack was found filled with rocks.
Rocks? Why?
Exactly. And his Buccaneers sweatshirt, which he was last seen wearing, was missing.
Okay.
But an unknown jacket, one his family didn't recognize as his, was on his body.
A different check.
Yes. And his wallet was also gone. These details immediately cast significant doubt on the circumstances of his death.
Okay, wait. So with those initial findings, the rocks in the backpack, the missing weapon, the strange clothing, how would investigators even begin to frame the core problem here? I mean, what does that immediately tell them, or at least suggest, about what happened to Andrew and the apparent intent of whoever was involved?
That's a critical question.
Yeah.
And it shapes the entire investigation from the outset. The presence of rocks in the backpack.
Yeah, the rocks.
And the absence of a weapon immediately suggests a deliberate effort. An effort to conceal the body, or at least its true circumstances, maybe for an extended period.
Concealment.
Right. If it were, say, a self-inflicted wound, the added effort of weighting down the body and dumping it in a river is highly unusual. It's just too much effort, usually.
Does it fit the typical pattern?
Exactly. So this tells investigators they're likely looking at something beyond a straightforward discovery. They might be dealing with an act intended to obscure the truth. The changing of clothes also points strongly towards an attempt maybe to prevent identification or perhaps mislead investigators somehow.
Okay.
So these factors immediately push the preliminary investigative problem, as Polio would call it, towards a homicide with an attempt at concealment, rather than, say, a simple missing person case that ended tragically or a straightforward suicide.
Okay, that makes sense. It points towards foul play right away. This is where the story takes a truly unexpected and, frankly, troubling turn, because the Andrew Sadek case has another layer.
Yes, it does.
His role as a confidential informant, or CI.
Right.
Andrew had been confronted by the Southeast Multi-County Agency Narcotics Task Force, known as SEMCA, after selling marijuana on campus. Now, under North Dakota law, apparently drug dealing on educational institution grounds is a far more severe offense.
Much more severe, yes. Enhanced penalties.
And Andrew was facing a possible 40-year prison sentence.
40 years, it's staggering.
Under such immense pressure, he was subsequently, well, coerced, it seems, into becoming a confidential informant for that task force.
And the use of confidential informants is, well, it's a critical tool in criminal investigations, but it's incredibly complex.
I can imagine.
It's governed by strict protocols, like the Attorney General's guidelines. These guidelines detail how CIs are used, but interestingly, they also include provisions for delayed notification.
Delayed notification. What's that?
It means, in some cases, law enforcement might delay telling the CI certain things if it might jeopardize an ongoing investigation or cause a suspect to flee from prosecution. This just hints at the inherent complexities and, frankly, the significant risks involved in CI operations, as we unfortunately see in Andrew's case.
Yeah.
And this broader issue ties into what some sources call the changing nature of crime and criminal investigations. Modern detective work, you see, has become exponentially more complex. Well, investigators today aren't just looking for fingerprints and footprints. They're scrambling to retrieve digital data from smartphones, social media accounts, security cameras.
Everywhere.
Even Fitbits, GPS devices, car cameras, you name it. And they have to act quickly because that digital trail, it goes cold fast.
Right. Data gets overwritten or deleted?
Exactly. And this complexity is only compounded by the rise of things like online drug trafficking on the dark web. That presents an entirely new landscape for law enforcement to navigate.
A whole new world of
Oh,
challenges.
absolutely.
Okay, let's do a quick micro recap here. So to quickly recap our initial picture,
Here.
we're confronting this accumulating crisis of cold cases with a devastating human cost. The Andrew Sadek case immediately presents these baffling details that challenge how we even determine the cause and manner of death, pointing strongly towards an intent to conceal.
Yes, the concealment aspect is key.
And woven into this, we see the complex, often risky landscape of modern criminal investigations, underscored by the reliance on confidential informants and this ever-expanding role of digital evidence, even in the dark corners of the internet.
A very challenging environment for investigators.
Now, let's pivot slightly to a crucial discipline that underpins much of what we've been discussing: medical legal death investigation.
Right, the foundation.
This field is absolutely vital because it provides specific, critical information about deceased individuals, especially when remains are, badly decomposed, burnt, fragmentary,
Cremated, dismembered.
or otherwise unidentifiable just by looking. The goal, ultimately, is to build a comprehensive biological profile of the individual.
Yes, which helps to exclude individuals who are not represented by the remains.
Right, narrowing it down.
And ultimately, hopefully, to achieve a positive identification.
Got it.
Now, the terminology in this field can be quite nuanced. Even the term forensic pathologist itself carries a degree of ambiguity.
How so?
Well, sometimes it explicitly assumes board certification by the American Board of Pathology, the ABP,
Okay, a high standard.
which signifies a high level of specialized training and expertise. However, at other times, the term is used more broadly to describe basically any pathologist who carries out death investigations or provides legal evidence, regardless of their board certification status, specifically in forensic pathology.
So the term itself can be a bit fuzzy.
It can be, and that distinction can be critical. When we look at the structure of death investigation systems in the U.S., they generally involve either medical examiners or coroners.
Right, I've heard those terms. What's the difference?
Well, coroners, notably, can be elected or appointed officials, and often they lack formal medical training.
No medical training for investigating deaths.
It varies by jurisdiction, but yes, it's possible, which can present significant challenges to the thoroughness of an investigation. In fact, a study looked at 151 exoneration cases, and it found that in only 12 of those cases was the expert either a physician with no claim to pathological expertise or not a physician at all.
So very few.
Right. In a staggering 92% of the cases, the expert had some form of pathological expertise.
Okay.
This highlights the foundational role of medical knowledge, even if the level of specific forensic specialization varied.
So digging into that difference a bit more, what are the key distinctions between a medical examiner system and a coroner system? And how might these differences inherently impact the thoroughness and reliability of a death investigation?
That's a great question. It really gets to the heart of how these investigations are structured.
Yeah.
The primary distinction is that a medical examiner is always a physician, usually a forensic pathologist, appointed based on their medical qualifications.
Okay, appointed physician. Got it.
Their findings are meant to be purely science-based. A coroner, on the other hand, is typically an elected or appointed public official who may or may not have medical training.
Elected.
Their role is often more administrative, determining cause and manner of death based on various forms of evidence, which includes, but isn't limited to, medical findings from, say, an autopsy performed by someone else.
So the coroner might not do the autopsy themselves.
Often not, especially if they lack medical training. They rely on reports. This difference, you can see, profoundly impacts reliability. A medical examiner system generally offers greater scientific rigor because of that mandated medical expertise.
Makes sense.
So for complex forensic findings like those involving decomposed remains or ambiguous trauma, a medical examiner system with its specialized medical knowledge is arguably inherently more effective.
Right.
Coroners might need to rely more heavily on external medical professionals, which can sometimes add layers of bureaucracy or even potential for misinterpretation.
Are there specific types of cases where one system might be demonstrably better than the other?
Well, I'd say cases requiring deep pathological interpretation, subtle injuries, complex poisonings, decomposed bodies strongly benefit from a medical examiner's direct expertise. Coroner systems might function adequately for more straightforward cases, but complexity really highlights the value of specialized medical training being integral to the system.
Okay.
Building on that, what's fascinating and sometimes troubling are the controversies surrounding forensic expertise itself. Research, like studies by Dror and others, has pointed to findings suggesting the potential for cognitive and racial bias in forensic pathology.
Bias. In pathology, how?
Well, the research indicates that even highly trained experts can sometimes be influenced, perhaps unconsciously, by contextual information provided about the case or by their own implicit biases.
Like knowing the suspect's race or the police theory?
Potentially, yes. Things unrelated to the purely medical evidence, and this can, potentially, impact their conclusions. Now, these findings have been, quite understandably, vigorously contested by many death investigators.
Okay.
It highlights a significant debate within the field itself. And we see this contention play out starkly in cases involving things like shaken baby syndrome or SBS.
Oh, right. Those are always controversial.
Extremely. Expert testimony can be highly contentious, leading to what are often described as battles of experts.
Yeah.
These battles sometimes even necessitate private second autopsies, where a new pathologist reviews all the evidence. For example, there was the Warren Hales case in Utah back in 2004. A board-certified forensic pathologist, John Plunkett, actually rebutted the initial pediatrician's SBS diagnosis.
And so a specialist disagreed.
Yes, strongly. Yet Hales was convicted anyway. This just underscores how deeply divided expert opinions can become and the immense impact this can have on legal outcomes.
That's a really challenging thought. If even forensic experts can be susceptible to bias or conflicting interpretations, how does the legal system truly ensure the integrity of such critical evidence? I mean, what steps are being taken or maybe should be taken to mitigate that risk, especially given what you mentioned about wrongful convictions? For instance, the National Registry of Exonerations detailed these problems with pathology evidence in 151 exoneration cases. You said the most common problem by far was contradicted.
That's right, 111 out of 151 cases.
Which means a qualified authority later disagreed with the original conclusion drawn by the death investigator.
Yes. A later expert looked at the same evidence and came to a different conclusion.
And beyond contradiction, there were also cases where the pathology evidence was deemed vague, like in 20 cases.
Lacking specificity.
Or overstated, also in 20 cases, where the expert's testimony went beyond what the scientific evidence could reasonably support.
Exactly. Stretching the interpretation, perhaps.
So these are documented problems.
They are, and that's precisely the core of the challenge. Let's delve into some concrete examples that illustrate these issues.
Okay.
Consider Dr. Elizabeth Peacock's testimony in a child death case. She asserted, quote, "The physics of it are impossible for a 21-month-old child to self-inflict certain injuries."
Impossible. That's a strong word.
Very strong. And it led her directly to a homicide conclusion. That kind of definitive statement can be incredibly powerful in swaying a jury.
Absolutely.
Now contrast this with other cases where initial time of death estimates were significantly contradicted by later expert review.
Right, the time of death.
For instance, in a case involving a woman named Penny, the original pathologist estimated the time of death as about 24 to 36 hours prior to her recovery from the pond.
Okay, a day to a day and a half.
But a later expert review, looking at the same evidence, suggested the death occurred at least 2 days earlier.
That's a potentially significant difference.
It can dramatically alter investigative timelines, alibis, suspect pools, everything. Such discrepancies, even if they seem small on the surface, can fundamentally change the trajectory of a case. This really highlights how critical, accurate, unbiased interpretation of pathological evidence is, and, well, how easily it can be challenged or even invalidated under further scrutiny.
Okay, so given these documented challenges, expert testimony issues, potential biases in forensic pathology, how might a legal system, thinking like Polly again, check the result or maybe derive differently its approach to these really contentious death investigations? What kind of transparent review mechanisms or maybe mandatory second opinions could be built in to enhance reliability and, frankly, public confidence?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Thinking about checking the result, one clear way would be to implement standardized, perhaps even blinded, mandatory peer review for all forensic pathology findings, especially in cases where homicide is suspected or the findings are inherently ambiguous.
Peer review, okay.
And to derive differently, a system could potentially require second independent autopsies by different pathologists in all child death cases, for example, or other specific high-stakes scenarios identified as prone to controversy.
Like the SBS cases.
Exactly. Such mechanisms would build in a layer of quality control, echoing Polya's principle of looking back and re-examining your work, perhaps from a different angle or with fresh eyes. It introduces a check and balance.
Okay, let's do another quick recap here. So, in this segment, we've explored the critical role of medical legal death investigation, understanding the variations in systems medical examiners versus coroners. We've also delved into the inherent challenges and controversies surrounding expert testimony, including that research into potential biases,
Cognitive and racial biases, yeah.
and the documented issues of contradictory findings that, unfortunately, have contributed to wrongful convictions.
That's right.
These insights really reveal this constant tension between seeking certainty and acknowledging the nuances and potential pitfalls in the pursuit of justice.
Well said.
Now, let's shift our focus to a highly specialized and equally crucial field: forensic anthropology.
The bone detectives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This discipline applies anthropological and skeletal biological principles directly to medical legal issues. Forensic anthropologists are typically called in when human remains are in conditions that make visual identification pretty much impossible.
Right.
Think decomposed, burnt, fragmentary, cremated, dismembered, or even fully skeletonized remains. Their expertise is in transforming these silent witnesses, the bones, into a source of vital information.
And the scope of forensic anthropological involvement is incredibly broad. They don't just analyze bones in a lab. No, they often assist in the careful recovery of remains from complex scenes. They conduct those detailed skeletal analyses for personal identification, yes, but they also describe the nature and extent of skeletal trauma, gunshot wounds, blunt force trauma, sharp force injuries visible on bone, and very often they provide expert testimony in court explaining their findings.
So field work, lab work, and court work.
A wide range.
Yeah.
And we have vivid examples of their work from the sources we looked at. The extensive recovery efforts at the World Trade Center after 9/11.
Oh, wow. That must have been incredibly difficult.
Immense. It included complex archaeological excavations at Ground Zero. Dr. Bradley J. Adams, who directs the Forensic Anthropology Unit for the Office of Chief Medical Examiner, OCME, in New York City, was deeply involved in that work.
Right.
His team handles all forensic anthropology casework across the 5 boroughs. Similarly, forensic anthropologists played a crucial role after Hurricane Katrina identifying victims. And they work on identifying individuals from mass graves, sometimes even internationally, on human rights cases. Think of Luis Fondebrider and the Equipo Argentino de Antropología the Argentine Forensic Anthropology Team, or EAF. They do incredible work globally.
That's amazing. You mentioned archaeological excavations at Ground Zero. The sources also mention that forensic anthropologists often have archaeological training.
Yeah.
How does this specific training, compared to, say, a traditional crime scene investigator, uniquely enhance their ability to recover human remains from really unusual locations? Like one case study mentioned a drainage pipe.
Yeah.
What specific skills or perspectives do they bring to that kind of complex recovery?
That's an excellent question because it ties directly into their methods and why they're so effective in certain situations. A forensic anthropologist's archaeological training gives them a unique skill set focused on systematic excavation, documentation, and recovery of buried or scattered remains.
Yeah.
They're trained to treat the scene almost like a historical site, a stratified puzzle. Traditional crime scene investigators are highly skilled, absolutely, but often their focus is more on surface evidence or more conventional crime scenes.
Right.
An archaeologist, however, is trained to understand depositional environments, how things get buried, how layers form. They understand how objects relate to their surroundings in 3 dimensions and how disturbances affect a site over time.
So they read the ground differently.
Exactly. This allows them to methodically recover every fragment, even from somewhere as difficult as a drainage pipe, ensuring no crucial piece of evidence, no matter how small, is missed. And critically, they preserve the context of the remains, how they were positioned, what they were associated with. That context can be vital.
That makes a lot of sense. So once they have the remains, what are the core methods for identification?
Right. So once recovery is done, or if remains are brought to them, they employ several detailed techniques. First, they construct a biological profile.
Okay, what does that involve?
This involves determining 4 key things from the skeleton: age at death, sex, ancestry or population affinity, and stature or height.
Age, sex, ancestry, stature, the big 4.
Exactly. And many of the standards they use can be sex-specific. So sometimes, if the initial sex estimation is uncertain, they might need to broaden the age range estimation or apply both male and female standards for comparison.
Okay.
For sex determination, they look at various features, particularly on the skull and pelvis, which show the most differences between typical males and females. For example, the supraorbital border, that's the brow ridge.
Right above the eyes.
Yes, a rounded and enlarged ridge typically indicates a male skull, while a sharper border with little to no ridge is more characteristic of a typical female skull. Though there's overlap, of course. They also examine the angle of the sciatic notch in the pelvis. It tends to be wider in females.
Interesting. What about age? How do you tell age from bones?
Age estimation is complex, especially for adults. They look at various indicators, things like cranial sutures, the natural seams where the skull bones fuse together during growth.
Like the soft spot on a baby's head.
Sort of, yes, those areas eventually fuse. Open sutures generally suggest youth. However, sutures become less reliable for aging after about 50 years or so, because sometimes bone can kind of pile up at the edges, a phenomenon called lapsed union, making precise aging more challenging for older individuals.
So it gets harder with older adults.
It does. They also use other methods like rib phase analysis. This involves looking at changes in the sternal ends of the ribs, the ends that connect to the sternum via cartilage.
Okay.
That cartilage gradually turns to bone, ossifies, as a person ages. Specific changes, like ossified projections appearing on the floors of these rib ends, can indicate specific age ranges, particularly for older individuals. Generally, for individuals over 50, the characteristics associated with advancing age are often much more convincing than any lingering youthful characteristics might be.
Fascinating. And ancestry and stature.
Ancestry estimation involves looking at features of the skull, like the shape of the nasal opening or the profile of the face, which show variation among different population groups. Stature is usually estimated using mathematical formulas based on the length of the long bones, like the femur or humerus.
Wow. Okay, so that's the biological profile. What else?
Finally, and often crucially, they look for individualizing characteristics. These are unique features that can help pinpoint a specific individual, going beyond the general profile.
Like what?
Things like healed fractures. For example, one source mentioned a distinct keel of projecting bone on the midshaft of a femur from a past injury. That's quite unique.
Yeah.
They also compare antemortem records, things from before death, like medical records or photos with skeletal features. For instance, a deviated nose clearly visible in a photograph, matching evidence of a broken nose on a skull. Or a dowager's hump, which is that forward curvature of the upper spine, known as kyphosis, matching a forward-jutting head posture seen in an old mugshot. These distinct markers are incredibly valuable for making a positive identification.
It sounds incredibly detailed. We have a fascinating and complex case study you mentioned that really highlights the challenges and precision involved. The W. Johnson case.
Yes, that's a great example.
Here, the skull was found in a different physical context from the rest of the skeleton, the postcranial remains.
Yeah.
So that emphasized the need for two separate identifications, essentially.
Right. A significant challenge.
What was unique about this case was the sheer wealth of medical information available. There were records spanning 2 decades, from 1977 to 1997.
A huge amount of data.
Documenting multiple traumatic events in his life, including injuries from, well, alcohol and drug abuse, fights, falls, even vehicular accidents. This extensive antemortem data proved invaluable, didn't it?
Absolutely invaluable. For the W. Johnson case, comparisons were made by looking for unique bony patterns in the vertebrae, ribs, and sternum that were identifiable from antemortem chest x-rays he'd had.
Comparing x-rays to the actual bones.
Exactly. Now, despite the skull being a very dark brown and the postcranial bones being lighter, suggesting the skull had been in a different soil matrix or environment for some time.
Right, separate deposition.
Statistical analysis, specifically minimum number of individuals, or M&I analysis, made it highly unlikely that the remains represented more than one person.
Okay.
And those medical records provided multiple consistent points of similarity between the antemortem x-rays and the postmortem bones, with only one minor inconsistency found. This strongly corroborated the identification. It showed the power of combining skeletal analysis with good antemortem records.
Incredible detective work.
And this leads us directly to a really core concept in forensic anthropology, taphonomy.
Taphonomy. Okay, what's that?
The term was coined by a Russian paleontologist named Efremov back in 1940. It literally means the science of burial. Taphos for burial, nomos for law or science.
Science of burial.
But its scope is vast. It covers the entire journey of an organism after death, from the biosphere, the world of the living, into the lithosphere, the earth itself.
So everything that happens after death.
Pretty much everything that affects the remains. It examines initial predation, dismemberment, consumption by scavengers, the process of soft tissue decomposition, transport due to natural forces like water or wind, or even human action.
Right.
Weathering from environmental exposure, burial itself, trampling by animals or people, and critically, the differential survival of bones based on their inherent durability.
Like teeth lasting longer.
Exactly. Teeth are usually the most durable components of the body. Now, it's important to understand that taphonomic changes are both subtractive.
Meaning information is lost?
Yes, information is lost as bones or soft tissue are destroyed or damaged, but they are also additive.
Additive.
In that markers left on the bone can illuminate its history. Things like cut marks from tools or tooth marks from animals or even humans. These additions tell a story about what happened to the remains.
Ah, okay. So taphonomy reads the history written on the remains.
Precisely. In a forensic context, taphonomy often centers on differentiating human actions like dismemberment to hide a crime, or dispose of a body from natural processes like animal scavenging or water transport, which can sometimes mimic human activity.
Distinguishing foul play from nature.
That's often a key question. And taphonomy also plays a crucial role in estimating the post-mortem interval, PMI.
The time since death.
Exactly. Researchers break down the progression of decay into distinct stages to help estimate this. It's not an exact science, but it provides a range.
What are the stages?
Generally, they talk about 1, the fresh stage, the very initial period right after death before major changes are apparent. 2, the discoloration stage. Changes in body color begin, often starting with a greenish tint on the abdomen. 3, the bloating stage. This is a key visual stage. It's characterized by a noticeable increase in body size due to the buildup of gas, which are byproducts of bacterial growth inside the body. Figures in the sources we looked at vividly illustrate this. They show how anatomical landmarks like the xiphoid process, that little cartilage at the end of the sternum, the ribs, the clavicle, even parts of the hip bone like the anterior iliac crest, can become obscured, essentially obliterated by this gas expansion in just a matter of days, depending on the environment.
Wow, that happens quickly.
It can, especially in warm, moist conditions. Then comes 4, the skeletonization stage. At this point, the body is nearly completely skeletonized. Most soft tissue is gone, though some scattered elements or even small amounts of dried, mummified tissue might still be present. 5. And finally, the skeletal decomposition stage. The process continues even after skeletonization, with further breakdown and weathering of the skeletal elements themselves over time.
So it's a continuous process.
Very much so. And researchers correlate these decompositional stages to time since death through 2 main avenues. They use cross-sectional accounts, looking at large numbers of cases from medical examiner records to see patterns.
Right.
And they conduct longitudinal studies where researchers actually observe and record the progression of decay from fresh to skeletonized, often using animal models or, in dedicated facilities, human remains. Examples like Galloway and colleagues' work in Arizona or Ryan and Dawson's in New Mexico illustrate how they account for the variability of decay rates in different environments. Temperature, humidity, insects all play a huge role.
It sounds incredibly complex, but vital for investigations. Okay, let's summarize this section. To recap the fundamental principles of forensic anthropology, it's about applying specialized skeletal biological principles to medico-legal issues, particularly in these complex cases involving compromised remains. This involves meticulous biological profiling, age, sex, ancestry, stature, discerning those unique individualizing characteristics.
Healed fractures, dental work.
And crucially, understanding taphonomy, the science of burial, and the stages of decomposition to piece together an individual's story and estimate their time since death. These methods essentially transform silent bones into invaluable witnesses, helping us solve that fundamental problem of identification.
Well put. They give a voice to the voiceless.
Now let's push forward into, well, the cutting edge of forensic science, highlighting how continuous technological advancements are refining our ability to solve crimes and identify remains in ways that, frankly, were once unimaginable.
Indeed. And a pivotal technology in this realm, one most people have heard of, is DNA analysis.
Right, DNA, the gold standard.
Often considered so, yes. We generally discuss 2 main types relevant here. First, nuclear DNA.
Okay.
This is the genetic material organized into our 46 chromosomes found in the nucleus of most cells. We inherit half from each biological parent.
The classic double helix.
Exactly. Nuclear DNA is incredibly powerful for identification because it's unique to each individual, except for identical twins. It allows for a precise statistical likelihood of relatedness.
Okay.
However, there's a catch. If the missing individual's own DNA isn't available from, say, a preserved blood sample, a toothbrush, or hair with roots,
Right, an antemortem sample?
then typically 2 or more biological relatives are required to provide comparative samples for analysis to reconstruct the missing person's profile or establish kinship.
Okay. Need family members.
Then we have mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA.
mtDNA. What's different about that?
The key difference is that mtDNA is inherited only from the mother. It's found in the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, outside the nucleus.
Okay, maternal line only.
Yes. What makes it particularly valuable in forensic anthropology, where samples are often very old or degraded, is its sheer quantity.
More of it.
Much more. There are hundreds, sometimes thousands, of copies of mtDNA per cell compared to just 2 copies of nuclear DNA in the nucleus.
Wow, that's a big difference.
It is. This makes it far more recoverable from challenging samples like old bone fragments or teeth, which are often the primary materials forensic anthropologists have to work with.
Okay, so better for degraded samples.
Definitely. Now, there's a trade-off. mtDNA is not a unique identifier in the same way nuclear DNA is. Meaning all maternally related individuals, you, your mother, your siblings, your mother's siblings, your maternal grandmother, will share the same mtDNA sequence.
Ah, okay, so it identifies a maternal lineage, not an individual.
Exactly. However, the amount of human mtDNA variation across different lineages is immense. So while it can't pinpoint one person uniquely, it allows for very high exclusion rates, typically around 98–99%. If the mtDNA from the remains doesn't match the suspected maternal line, you can exclude them with high confidence.
I see. Still very useful.
Extremely useful. A famous historical example where mtDNA analysis provided conclusive proof was the Anastasia case. For years, a woman named Anna Anderson claimed to be the Grand Duchess Anastasia Romanov, the daughter of the last Russian Tsar.
Oh, right, I remember that story.
Well, mtDNA analysis eventually compared her mtDNA to known maternal relatives of the Romanovs, like Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, and it definitively showed that Anna Anderson was not maternally related to the Romanovs, finally settling decades of debate.
Wow. Science solving history's mysteries. Okay, so if mitochondrial DNA isn't a unique identifier like nuclear DNA, how does its sheer quantity in degraded samples and its strict maternal inheritance pattern actually overcome this limitation in forensic investigations? Especially thinking about large-scale scenarios like mass disasters, where traditional identifiers might be scarce or impossible to obtain.
That's a critical point, and it perfectly illustrates the power of understanding the different forensic tools and their specific strengths and limitations. You hit it exactly. The sheer abundance of mtDNA and its clear maternal inheritance are precisely what make it invaluable in those incredibly challenging scenarios.
Okay.
Imagine a mass disaster, a plane crash, a building collapse where bodies are severely fragmented or badly degraded by fire or decomposition. Nuclear DNA might be completely destroyed or too fragmented to get a profile from many samples.
Right, too damaged.
But with hundreds or thousands of mtDNA copies per cell, your odds of getting a usable sample, even from a tiny bone fragment or a tooth root, are much, much higher.
So you can get something where nuclear DNA fails.
Often, yes. Then, because it's passed down the maternal line unchanged, you can use the mtDNA from a living relative, a mother, a sibling who shares the same mother, or even a child of a maternal aunt or grandmother to establish a potential link.
So you cast a wider net for relatives.
Exactly. While it won't uniquely identify that fragment as belonging to John Doe versus his maternal uncle, it can definitively say, this fragment belongs to someone in this maternal lineage.
Yeah.
In a mass disaster with many unidentified victims, that allows you to sort remains, to associate parts, and to dramatically narrow down the pool of possibilities for each set of remains. Often, that mtDNA link, combined with maybe some anthropological data or circumstantial evidence, is enough to lead to a positive identification where nuclear DNA alone couldn't.
So it's about leveraging its unique properties, abundance, and inheritance to solve a different but crucial facet of the identification problem, especially when things are really tough.
Precisely. It's a powerful tool in the toolkit, especially for degraded or limited samples. Now, building on DNA technology, we have a field that's advancing incredibly fast. Forensic DNA phenotyping, FDP.
Phenotyping, what's that? Predicting appearance.
Exactly. FDP goes beyond just identification, like matching a suspect to a crime scene sample. It aims to predict externally visible characteristics, EVCs like eye color, hair color, and skin color, directly from a DNA profile.
Wow. Like a genetic sketch artist.
In a way, yes. This capability is potentially revolutionary because it acts like a kind of DNA mugshot, offering investigators clues about what an unknown person might look like. This is especially helpful when traditional methods, like searching a DNA database for a match, yield limited results or no hits at all.
So it gives them something to go on, an investigative lead.
Precisely. Specific tools have been developed and validated for this. There's Irisplex, which predicts eye color with high accuracy, then Hirisplex, which predicts both eye and hair color, and now Hirisplex S, which adds skin color prediction to the mix.
Amazing. How reliable is it?
It's getting better and better, particularly for traits like eye and hair color, especially at the extremes, very light or very dark. Skin color is more complex genetically, but accuracy is improving. It's not perfect, but it provides probabilistic information that can be incredibly valuable.
And this all starts within the DNA sample, right?
Absolutely. Fundamental to all DNA work, including FDP, are reliable DNA extraction methods. For example, silica-based extraction using commercial kits like those from QAGen are commonly used.
Yeah.
The process involves careful sample collection. The sources mention needing maybe 50 microliters of blood or saliva collected with sterile cotton swabs, followed by careful storage, usually at 4 degrees C, like in a refrigerator, to preserve the DNA integrity and minimize contamination before extraction. Getting a clean, usable sample is the first critical step.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out. Now, beyond DNA, which gets a lot of headlines, other key forensic technologies continue to evolve and prove their worth, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Fingerprints, for instance, remain incredibly valuable evidence. They're still a cornerstone of identification.
The classics are still classics.
They are. The powder method is a common technique for developing latent prints, those invisible prints left behind. And there's even novel research looking into things like using ophthalmic fiberglass powder for better results on certain surfaces.
Interesting. But forensic science is also looking to less conventional traces, right? You mentioned ear prints.
Yes, ear prints. It sounds a bit unusual, perhaps, but they are actually commonly found at crime scenes, especially burglaries where someone might press their ear against a door or a window to listen.
Oh, makes sense.
They're increasingly being emphasized as an unconventional but potentially potent form of evidence. Why? Because ears, like fingerprints, have unique anatomical characteristics.
Ears are unique.
The folds, the shape, the curves, the overall morphology is highly individualistic, and they also exhibit temporal consistency, meaning your ear shape doesn't drastically change over time, unlike, say, facial appearance, which can change with age, weight, or expression. So while it's similar in principle to face recognition, ear biometrics might actually leverage more dependable and readily extractable features than the very complex process of facial biometrics. You can even see diagrams in some forensic texts showing different earlobe structures like oval, triangular, rectangular, and round works, which can be part of the identification process.
Fascinating. Finding new witnesses where we once saw only blank spaces, like you said.
Exactly. Pushing the boundaries of what constitutes evidence. But all these technological advances, while powerful, are also profoundly changing the nature of crime and criminal investigations, making detective work, in many ways, far more complex. The proliferation of digital evidence is a prime example.
Right, we touched on this earlier.
Retrieving digital data from smartphones, social media accounts, security cameras, those Fitbits, GPS devices, even cameras in cars. It presents significant challenges. Investigators have to act with extreme speed because, as we said, the digital trail gets cold very, very quickly, data gets overwritten, logs expire.
It's like your car knows your entire bad day now.
Pretty much. And a major hurdle they face is encryption and the problem of going dark.
Going dark.
Yes. Modern encryption methods, which are great for our personal privacy and security, increasingly prevent law enforcement from accessing digital evidence, even when they have judicial orders, like a warrant.
So the data is there, but they can't read it.
Precisely. The phrase going dark refers exactly to this growing inability of police to access crucial digital evidence due to strong, ubiquitous encryption.
What do they do then?
Well, sometimes, to circumvent data stored in foreign countries, Maybe social media data on servers overseas law enforcement agencies rely on mutual legal assistance treaties, or MLATs.
MLATs.
Okay, these are essentially workarounds. They're bilateral agreements between countries that allow prosecutors in one nation to formally request investigatory assistance from another nation to secure evidence for criminal proceedings. But they can be slow and cumbersome processes.
Sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare.
It can be. And finally, looking forward, the growing importance of artificial intelligence, AI and machine learning, ML, in forensics cannot be overstated.
AI in forensics. How is that being used?
It's having a transformative impact across various domains already. Think about analyzing ransomware attacks. AI can help understand infection methods, how it propagates, the encryption algorithms used, any anti-forensic techniques the malware employs to hide itself, and map out its command and control communications.
So dissecting digital crimes.
Yes. But more broadly, AI and ML are contributing to uncovering insights, patterns, and connections related to all sorts of criminal activities in general criminal investigations. They can sift through massive data sets, financial records, communication logs, crime reports much faster, and potentially find links that a human investigator might miss.
Helping find the needle in the digital haystack.
Exactly, and then maybe connecting that needle to other needles in other haystacks. It's about pattern recognition and connection finding on a massive scale.
Okay, another recap. So in summary, we've seen how these cutting-edge technologies like advanced DNA phenotyping, refined fingerprint analysis, these emerging ear biometrics, and the application of AI and machine learning are truly revolutionizing forensic investigations.
Changing the game.
But at the same time, these advancements also introduce new complexities and challenges, particularly with the explosion of digital evidence and the persistent issue of encryption. It's constantly reshaping how justice is pursued.
It really is. It's a constant race, isn't it, between criminal ingenuity and scientific innovation.
We've seen how modern technology is reshaping justice, definitely. But to truly grasp this whole problem of unknowns in society, sometimes it helps to step back, way back, and ask, how did people even think about data and solve problems, say, a century ago, before DNA, before AI?
That's a fantastic question.
What can that historical lens tell us about the enduring challenges and maybe the evolution of our institutions?
That's a crucial perspective. And looking at a source like Commercial West magazine from February 3, 1923, offers us this fascinating snapshot of the economic and social concerns people were grappling with a century ago and how they framed problems then.
1923. Okay, what was going on?
Well, in banking and finance, you see a very different landscape. Early 20th century institutions operated quite differently. They were dealing with things like foreign government bonds, and there were distinct structures like joint stock land banks versus federal land banks.
You mean stock land banks?
Yeah. These were privately capitalized banks that made farm loans, operating under federal charter but with private stockholders. They were often seen at the time as being more efficiently managed than the purely government-run federal land banks.
Why was that?
The thinking was that their directors were experienced local bankers who actually owned stock in the bank themselves. They had a vested interest, skin in the game. They understood local agricultural values firsthand. This direct involvement and personal investment were believed to make them more effective in managing risk and appraising property value compared to perhaps more bureaucratic, federally appointed appraisers. It gives us an insight into early thinking about problem solving through personal accountability and local expertise, especially in financial matters.
Interesting. What about crime? Were they worried about fraud back then?
Oh, absolutely. For early fraud prevention, we see advice from William J. Burns. He was a very prominent detective of his time, later head of the Bureau of Investigation, the precursor to the FBI.
Okay. What was his advice?
He was advising bankers specifically on combating check swindlers, people altering or forging checks. His advice was very practical, very physical. Use patent inks, safety paper, and check writers.
Physical security for checks.
Exactly. Things designed to make it physically harder for criminals to alter the checks. This simple physical security approach stands in stark contrast to today's battles against sophisticated cybercrime and digital fraud, doesn't it?
Completely different world.
Yet the underlying principle of making crime harder, reducing the temptation or opportunity, remains universal. Burns warned bankers using old, antiquated methods that they'd be victimized by altered checks. A timeless warning, really, against failing to adapt to evolving criminal tactics.
And some things never change. What are the broader economy?
Looking at economic trends, the early 1920s were a time of rapid shifts following World War I. Total taxation in the U.S. had soared dramatically from about $1.4 billion in 1903 to over $8.3 billion in 1921.
Wow, huge increase.
And the ratio of taxation to national income had also significantly increased, from under 7% to nearly 17%.
People were feeling it.
They were, and interestingly, the source notes that the purchasing power of the dollar in 1921 was actually 26.9% more than it was in 1919 due to post-war deflation.
So prices were falling.
Yes. Which meant that even if the federal tax rate dipped slightly, the actual tax burden felt by the average American was effectively about 15% higher because their dollars were worth more. It highlights how complex economic realities shape daily life and, by extension, the societal pressures that could indirectly impact things like crime rates and the resources available for law enforcement.
Makes sense. Were there big societal shifts happening too?
Absolutely. We see notable agricultural and population shifts. Grain statistics reflected a bearish market, suggesting economic challenges for farmers. At the same time, the 1920 census revealed a dramatic population movement.
People moving.
Big time. U.S. cities were growing 7.5 times faster than rural populations. There was a tremendous increase, the article says, in movement from farms to cities just in the preceding 2 years.
The Great Migration to cities.
Yes. And this massive demographic shift undoubtedly created new challenges for urban infrastructure, social services, housing, and, of course, policing in those rapidly growing cities. It's a stark reminder that crime patterns are deeply intertwined with broader societal changes.
Definitely. Anything else stand out from 1923?
Well, there's this truly intriguing advertisement for the Hilburn system of automatic savings.
Automatic savings. Sounds modern.
It does, but listen to the promise. It claimed, quote, "You never deposit a penny, but your account would grow by itself."
Wait, what? How? That sounds impossible. Okay, thinking about that Hilburn system from 1923, promising accounts that would grow by itself without you depositing a penny. What fundamental Polya principle does that seem to promise bypassing? And how does that maybe illustrate an enduring human desire for easy solutions, even in complex financial matters?
That's a perfect observation. That Hilburn system example beautifully illustrates the enduring human desire for a shortcut, right? A way to bypass Polya's essential devising a plan and carrying out the plan principles.
Yeah, skip the hard work.
Exactly. It promises a solution, wealth accumulation, without the necessary effort or foundational work, like, actually saving money. It's a fascinating historical mirror reflecting our persistent yearning for effortless success, maybe a cautionary tale echoing even in today's digital get-rich-quick schemes.
Yeah. Some things really don't change.
It promises to solve the problem of saving without requiring any actual problem-solving effort from the individual. It's magic, not method. Now, let's transition from that historical glimpse to the evolving and absolutely critical role of academic institutions in shaping the future of justice. These institutions, colleges, universities, are the bedrock of training, research, and innovation in the fields we've been discussing.
Where the next generation of experts comes from.
Precisely.
Well,
take a look at how a college council operates, for instance. This body plays a key role in academic governance, overseeing curriculum, standards, and policies. Its composition typically includes a chairperson, maybe a co-chair, a director of assessment, often an associate provost acting ex officio, along with elected full-time faculty members and higher education officers representing various constituencies.
So a mix of faculty and administration.
Yes. And importantly, this council usually includes representatives from a wide array of academic departments, things like Africana Studies, anthropology, art and music, communication and theater arts, criminal justice, economics, English, health and physical education, history. The list goes on.
Very diverse.
This diversity reflects the deeply interdisciplinary nature of modern education and really of understanding complex societal problems. You need input from humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, and professional fields like criminal justice or computer science to get a holistic view.
Makes sense. Problems aren't neat and tidy in one department.
Exactly. Now, looking specifically at curriculum development, particularly for fields relevant to our discussion like digital forensics and cybersecurity, we see a clear emphasis on a robust mathematical and scientific foundation.
Lots of math.
Yes. Things like advanced courses in calculus, like Calculus FF mentioned in one source, linear algebra, introduction to ordinary differential equations, numerical analysis. These provide students with the core analytical tools necessary for complex digital investigations, for understanding algorithms, for data analysis.
Oh, not just the field skills.
Absolutely. And ethics is also a required component, which is crucial. We see courses like PHI 216, Ethics and Information Technology, listed as required.
Good. Ethics is important here.
Essential. And then typically there's a capstone experience, like a CSCI 400, 401 capstone experience in digital forensic cybersecurity, which brings all these skills together in a practical, applied project.
Pulling it all together.
The rationale for something like a computer science minor in one college's documents really highlights the thinking. It states, quote, "Computers are the future. By learning to use a computer, students are securing their tomorrows."
A bit dated maybe, but the sentiment holds.
Right. It emphasizes building self-confidence, increasing marketability, enhancing competence in chosen fields, and the ability to work quickly and efficiently with data. The learning outcomes stress using algebraic, numerical, graphical, or statistical methods to draw accurate conclusions and solve mathematical problems.
So practical skills.
Very practical. Students are expected to write commented code that can be understood by others. Collaboration is key. And they need to be able to interpret natural language queries, like a research question, into code for statistical analysis, like calculating a mean or a confidence interval. It really underscores the blending of computational thinking and analytical skills.
Got it. What about other areas? Is it all tech and math?
Not at all. There's also often a strong human rights focus integrated into the curriculum, even within literature or social science departments.
Yeah.
For example, one course described a struggle for human rights tracking action research project.
Okay, what did that involve?
It required students to relate literary texts they were reading to contemporary rights-based issues. They had to apply knowledge gathering and interpretive skills to research actual action-based rights movements.
Ow.
They explored questions like, what are the group's specific goals? How do they describe themselves and their mission? What public outreach forms do they use? Protests, lobbying, social media? What rhetorical strategies do they employ in their communication? And interestingly, how do their opponents characterize their actions?
Wow, that's applied humanities.
Exactly. This component directly aligns with a social justice mission, preparing students not just for further academic study, but for diverse careers where understanding human rights, advocacy, and communication is crucial.
That seems really valuable.
It is. And even seemingly unrelated specialized programs can have connections. One source mentioned a cosmetics course.
Cosmetics, how does that relate?
Well, this course investigated the scientific principles behind cosmetics, taught students how to identify potentially false advertising claims, and educated them on potential product toxicity. It required a basic understanding of biology and chemistry.
The chemistry connection.
Right. That knowledge base could certainly connect to forensic chemistry applications, identifying unknown substances found at crime scenes, analyzing trace evidence. It showcases how seemingly unrelated fields can unexpectedly intersect in forensic science.
Interesting connection. What about the rules? Academic integrity.
Absolutely crucial in academia. Institutions have detailed policies on academic integrity and accessibility. Policies on academic dishonesty and plagiarism clearly define offenses.
Like what?
Like copying words without quotation marks, presenting someone else's ideas without acknowledgement, using information that isn't common knowledge without citation, and failing to acknowledge collaborators on assignments. Internet plagiarism, like submitting downloaded papers or cutting and pasting without proper attribution, is also explicitly forbidden.
Standard stuff, but important.
Very important. Furthermore, institutions have Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA policies, to ensure reasonable academic accommodations for qualified students with disabilities, provided they are determined eligible by the college's Office of Accessibility Services. Ensuring equal access is key.
Good. What about broader university initiatives?
Beyond specific curricula, universities often drive broader initiatives that impact justice and community well-being. ENMD at UND, for example, is a remarkable program at the University of North Dakota.
E&M.
Indians into Medicine. It has trained nearly 300 Indigenous physicians and other health professionals since it began. This includes Dr. Monica Mayer, who became the first female physician ever to serve on a tribal council out of all 500-plus federally recognized tribes in the U.S.
Wow, that's incredible impact.
It highlights institutional efforts to address historical disparities in healthcare and leadership, and build capacity in underserved communities. We also learned from UND's history about Florence Klingensmith.
Who was she?
A North Dakota aviation pioneer in the 1930s. Tragically, her 1933 air race accident was used by some at the time to try and diminish women's role in aviation, arguing it was too dangerous for them.
Ugh. Using a tragedy to reinforce bias.
Exactly. It reflects the broader historical biases and societal challenges women faced in professional fields, even highly skilled ones like aviation. These historical insights show us how societal biases can often warp the narrative around individual achievements or tragedies, sometimes for decades.
A sobering reminder.
Okay, that was a lot. Let's try a mega recap of everything we've covered so far.
Good idea.
We started with the accumulating crisis of cold cases and the devastating human cost they exact. We then moved into the immediate mysteries of Andrew Sadek's case, highlighting the ambiguities and the inherent risks of modern investigative tools like confidential informant.
Right, the CI aspect.
Then we thoroughly explored the fundamental principles of medical legal death investigation, including the variations between ME and coroner systems, the significant challenges around expert testimony, and the documented issues of bias and error that can, tragically, lead to wrongful convictions. Our deep dive continued into the detailed scientific methods of forensic anthropology, building biological profiles, identifying individuals from skeletal remains, and the crucial role of taphonomy and decomposition in estimating time since death.
Bone detectives.
Exactly. We then shifted to the cutting-edge technological advancements: DNA phenotyping, advanced fingerprint analysis, ear biometrics, and the emerging role of AI and machine learning, while also acknowledging the new complexities brought by digital evidence and encryption.
Technology is a double-edged sword.
In some ways, yes. Finally, we looked at the historical and institutional contexts, glimpsing economic and social concerns from 1923, and examining how academic institutions are evolving curricula and initiatives to prepare future professionals, emphasizing interdisciplinary skills, ethics, and human rights. This entire journey really underscores the increasing complexity of these cases, the vital role of diverse expertise from many fields, and the continuous evolution required in the relentless pursuit of justice.
That covers a lot of ground. Should we do the flashcard list?
Let's do it. Just key terms and ideas to help anchor this.
Good.
Key terms: cold case, medical legal investigation, forensic pathologist, coroner, shaken baby syndrome, SBS, forensic anthropologist, taphonomy, postmortem interval, PMI, nuclear DNA, mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, forensic DNA phenotyping, FDP, encryption, mutual legal assistance treaty, MLAT, artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, ML, confidential informant, CI, CODIS, combined DNA index system, VICAP, violent criminal apprehension program, NGI, next generation identification system, YSTR testing. Got those. Key concepts: contested expertise, cognitive bias, racial bias, stages of decomposition, identification from skeletal remains, digital forensics, unresolved homicides, institutionalized bias, academic integrity, Polya's problem-solving principles. Key cases people: Andrew Sadek, the W. Johnson case study, Anastasia Anna Anderson, Florence Klingensmith, William J. Burns.
Yep.
Key organization entities: SEMSA, the Narcotics Task Force; OCME, Office of Chief Medical Examiner, NYC example; EAF, Argentine Forensic Anthropology Team; JPAC CIDL, Joint POMIA Accounting Command Central Identification Laboratory involved in identifying military remains; National Registry of Exonerations, John Jay College, UND, University of North Dakota; FBI, IC3, Internet Crime Complaint Center.
Yeah.
Essential takeaways: unresolved cases have a massive human and societal cost. Forensic science is constantly evolving but faces significant challenges. Bias, interpretation. Interdisciplinary approaches are crucial. Historical contexts illuminate present-day issues. And institutional structures like colleges and law enforcement agencies play a critical role in training, developing, and applying forensic capabilities.
That's a great summary list. Now let's bring our discussion back to the systemic issues that continue to hinder justice, and perhaps more importantly, explore the pathways to improvement, particularly in the context of those persistent cold cases we started with.
Right. And this is where understanding things like the national best practices for implementing and sustaining a cold case investigation unit becomes really crucial.
Okay, best practices.
As we discussed earlier, there's no single universal definition for a cold case, but the problem of accumulating unresolved homicides is undeniably growing. We mentioned that figure. Over 100,000 accumulated in the U.S. since 1995.
Staggering.
It is. But the very act of creating and maintaining a dedicated cold case unit sends a powerful message. It demonstrates an agency's commitment to victims and the community. It reinforces public confidence in the justice system.
Okay.
And it actually brings tangible cost savings in the long run. By resolving these cases, agencies can free up valuable resources, lighten investigator caseloads on active cases, reduce administrative burdens, and even relieve backlogs in laboratory evidence queues.
So it's efficient, too.
It can be. And fundamentally, most importantly, solving cold cases can prevent future victimizations and their associated costs, as we touched on earlier.
Right, getting dangerous people off the streets.
Exactly. Now, the Office of Justice Programs, OJP, has made significant efforts to help address these backlogs, particularly with DNA. Since the year 2000, the National Institute of Justice, NIJ, and the Bureau of Justice Assistance, BJA, have provided substantial funding for DNA capacity enhancement and for reducing inventories of untested evidence.
Tackling the backlog.
Yes, and the results are significant. As of December 2017, this funding had led to over 1 million cases being analyzed for DNA.
Oh, yeah, wow.
And more than 400,000 forensic crime scene DNA profiles being uploaded to CODIS.
CODIS, the national database.
Right, the Combined DNA Index System. This helps law enforcement link crimes across jurisdictions and identify suspects. And those uploads resulted in over 200,000 hits or matches. It clearly demonstrates the power of systematically analyzing old evidence with new technology and using these databases.
Huge impact.
Immense, which leads to a critical best practice: the re-examination of evidence. The guideline essentially states that all unresolved case evidence must be brought up to current scientific standards.
Everything gets a second look.
Ideally, yes, or at least assessed for potential retesting. Evidence that was once thought to have no forensic value, maybe old bone fragments, degraded tissue samples, can now potentially be retested with more sensitive DNA techniques, things like YSTR testing.
YSTR.
That focuses specifically on the Y chromosome, which is passed down paternally. It can be very useful in cases with mixtures of male and female DNA, or with very degraded samples, sometimes yielding full DNA profiles where older methods fail.
Okay.
Investigators must also diligently confirm if evidentiary information, like fingerprints or DNA profiles from a cold case, is already in the relevant databases, local, state, or federal. And crucially, ensure it has been periodically resubmitted and rerun against the database, because both the technology and the database contents continually improve and expand over time. A search done 5 years ago might yield a hit today.
Keep checking back. That makes sense. Now, thinking about re-examining old evidence, especially in a cold case from decades past where maybe the original documentation wasn't as standardized as today, how does notation, like having really clear definitions for all the specialized terms and jargon used back then, become even more critically important for current investigators revisiting those files?
Oh, that's a profound point. Because without clear notation, the language of the past, the way things were recorded, can inadvertently obscure vital clues. It makes it incredibly difficult to properly understand the problem, as Polio would put it, from the old records.
Right.
Ambiguity in those old records can be a significant barrier to applying new techniques effectively. Imagine trying to reanalyze evidence that was described using outdated terminology, or maybe terms that were specific to that lab or that investigator but weren't clearly defined anywhere.
It'd be like trying to follow a recipe written in a forgotten dialect.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. Consistent and clear notation, or at least maybe a glossary of terms and methods used by that agency at that specific time, becomes essential for later investigators to accurately interpret and leverage that original information alongside new technologies. It's about maintaining a complete and crucially understandable record of the problem across time. Continuing with Pathways to Justice, the importance of a multidisciplinary team approach really cannot be overstated.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
In cold cases, absolutely. It's fundamentally a team effort, not something one detective usually cracks alone. These invaluable teams are composed of experienced law enforcement personnel, forensic science experts, DNA analysts, anthropologists, trace evidence examiners, prosecutors who understand the legal hurdles, and medical legal death investigators, MEs or coroners.
Bringing all the perspectives together.
Exactly. They all come together to offer their diverse expertise. Each member brings a different lens to understand the problem, and collectively they can better devise a plan that covers all angles.
Makes sense.
And academic partnerships are an often overlooked but incredibly valuable source of support for these units.
Universities helping out.
Yes. Colleges and universities can provide subject matter expertise that a small department might lack. They can offer student labor, bright, motivated students assisting with case file reviews or data analysis under supervision.
Right.
They often have access to new technologies or specialized labs, and sometimes they can even assist agencies in procuring grant funding.
That's a great resource. Are there examples?
Definitely. The sources mention the Institute for Forensic Anthropology and Applied Sciences at the University of South Florida. They integrate students directly into cold case assessments and have even assisted in over 30 exhumations of unidentified John and Jane Does, specifically for DNA analysis.
Wow, hands-on work.
Very much so. Similarly, Olivet College students in Michigan work alongside local cold case investigators, providing fresh perspectives and dedicated effort that resource-strapped agencies might struggle to find otherwise.
That's a win-win.
It really is. Furthermore, crucial federal resources are available to assist local agencies. The FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, VICAP, is a national database designed for collecting, collating, and analyzing information on major violent criminal cases, homicides, sexual assaults, missing persons where foul play is suspected.
Yeah.
VICAP can help link seemingly disparate crimes across state lines, allowing investigators to look back at other potentially related cases and check the result against new leads or patterns. It helps see the bigger picture.
Connecting the dots nationally.
Precisely. And the FBI's Next Generation Identification System, NGI services, specifically the Advanced Fingerprint Identification Technology, AFI, have dramatically improved matching accuracy for fingerprints. The sources say it improved latent print matching accuracy from about 92% to over 99% for cold case searches.
Huge improvement for old prints.
It offers new hope for identifying suspects or even victims from fingerprints left behind decades ago.
Now, let's revisit the Andrew Sadek case specifically, in light of these systemic issues and the complexities of the justice system we've been discussing. Andrew's parents, in their relentless pursuit of answers, ended up suing SEMCA, the Narcotics Task Force, and the Deputy Sheriff Jason Weber for wrongful death.
Yes, they did. A very difficult step for any family to take.
Their lawsuit alleged that SEMCA failed to adequately train Andrew for his role as a confidential informant, which is inherently dangerous. And they alleged that Deputy Weber had coerced Andrew into becoming a CI by threatening him with that daunting 40-year prison sentence, which they believed ultimately led to his death.
The core of their argument was that this coercion and lack of training put him in a position where he was killed.
Right. What happened with the lawsuit?
Well, the outcome was complex and, for the family, undoubtedly painful. The court ultimately granted summary judgment for the defense, meaning the case didn't go to a full trial. And the North Dakota Supreme Court later affirmed this ruling. Their reasoning was that there was no legally sufficient proximal relationship or direct causal link between the defendant's actions, the threat, the recruitment, and Andrew's subsequent death. They reasoned that Weber's statement about the 40 years was technically a prediction of potential sentencing, not necessarily deceitful coercion in a legal sense.
So legally, they weren't held responsible.
Correct. That legal outcome, however, hasn't done much to resolve the ongoing debate and the lingering questions surrounding Andrew's death itself.
Right. The core question remains, suicide versus murder.
Exactly. While investigators could not definitively determine if the gunshot wound was self-inflicted or not, they left the manner of death undetermined.
Which happens sometimes.
It does, when the evidence is ambiguous. But Andrew's family firmly believes he did not kill himself. They point constantly to those perplexing details we discussed earlier. The backpack filled with rocks.
Yeah, the rocks again.
The clothing discrepancies. His own sweatshirt missing. An unknown jacket found on his body. Some commentators argue, quite logically I think, that if it were suicide, adding rocks to a backpack and then managing to dispose of one's own body in a river after being shot, it just seems like too much trouble, as one source put it.
Highly improbable sequence of events for a suicide.
It strongly suggests an intent to conceal the body, which is not typical of suicide. This points to that deeper unknown about the true manner of death.
So if not suicide, then concealment.
And this leads to a general consensus shared by the family and many commentators that whoever disposed of Andrew's body absolutely wanted to prevent its discovery or at least easy identification.
Why?
The clear intent seems to have been to keep it a missing person case for as long as possible, if not forever, to obscure the fact that a death had even occurred.
Okay, so who might have done that? What are the theories on perpetrators?
Well, interestingly, some argue against the idea that, say, the drug dealers Andrew was informing on were responsible.
Really? Why not? Seems like the obvious motive.
The argument goes like this. If dealers wanted to send an unambiguous message to other potential informants, they might actually want the body found quickly and obviously as a clear warning.
Ah, make an example.
Right. Additionally, some argue that dealers might fear attracting more police presence to the area if they were to kill a known informant nearby. It's counterintuitive, perhaps, but it's one line of reasoning.
Okay.
The case inevitably draws unsettling parallels to other tragic cases. like the Rachel Hoffman case in Florida. She was also a young confidential informant.
What happened to her?
She was killed during a poorly supervised drug-buy operation she was asked to conduct by police. It tragically illustrates the exceptionally high risks inherent in CI operations, especially with young or inexperienced individuals. It highlights the inherent danger in these solutions to criminal problems. Using informants can sometimes create new tragedies.
A terrible risk.
Absolutely. And finally, there's the challenge of open investigations and information access. This is a huge hurdle for families like the Sadeks. When a case, especially a potential homicide, is still officially classified as open, investigative records, police reports, interviews, forensic findings are often sealed from the public and even from the family.
Why seal them?
The rationale is to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. Releasing details could tip off suspects, compromise witness testimony, or jeopardize future prosecution.
Okay, I see the logic, but...
It creates this fundamental and agonizing tension between the needs of the investigation and a family's desperate right to know what happened to their loved one. It leaves them in this limbo of agonizing uncertainty, often for years.
Right. Thinking about that tension, that symmetry, as one source called it, of information flow in cold cases, you have law enforcement's imperative for investigative secrecy on one side versus a victim's family's deep desire for justice and truth on the other. How might Polya's problem-solving approach encourage new models for more transparent engagement with victims' families without actually compromising those ongoing investigations? Are there creative solutions that could bridge this divide?
That's a crucial derived differently kind of question, isn't it? Pushing us to rethink the traditional, often very closed-off models. One way Polya's approach could help is by emphasizing the need to truly understand the problem from all stakeholder perspectives. That includes fully acknowledging the legitimacy of the victim's family's need for information, for involvement, for feeling like they aren't just shut out.
So recognize their need as part of the problem to be solved.
Exactly. A creative solution might involve establishing independent, non-investigative liaisons specifically for families in cold cases. These liaisons wouldn't be the detectives working the case, but maybe trained victim advocates or social workers.
Okay.
They could perhaps have access to broader, maybe declassified summaries of investigative steps taken, or agencies could create dedicated, secure family portals online that provide general progress updates, evidence submitted to lab, interviews conducted this month, without revealing sensitive tactical details.
So more communication about the process, not necessarily the specifics.
Precisely. It allows for a more open dialogue about the process of problem solving, acknowledging the family's stake, without exposing the specific tactics or evidence that need to remain confidential. It's about acknowledging that finding a solution for justice also includes finding a solution for the family's need for communication and peace of mind as much as possible, and that requires more transparency. And this leads directly, really, to the paramount importance of adopting a truly victim-centered approach in all cold case investigations.
Victim-centered. What does that mean in practice?
Well, first, it means investigators, and frankly the media too, should probably refrain from using the word closure. It's often a misnomer.
Closure isn't real.
For many victims and survivors of homicide, there is no true closure. The hurt, the loss, the pain persists, sometimes for decades, regardless of whether the case is solved. However, resolving a case, or even just actively addressing it again after years of silence, can allow a healing process to begin, or at least to progress. It provides answers, accountability.
Okay, focus on healing and answers, not closure.
Right. And sensitive, transparent communication is absolutely paramount. Investigators need to profoundly understand the complicated nature of grief, the diverse ways people react to violence and trauma, and the very real potential for victims to be re-traumatized when their unresolved cases are suddenly reopened after years.
Tread carefully.
Very carefully. It's vital to communicate appropriately and transparently, explaining to victims why a case might be designated a cold case, and framing it positively, explaining that this designation can actually bring additional resources and specialty investigative expertise, which significantly increases the chance for a resolution. It's not about giving up. It's about bringing in the specialists.
Managing expectations, but offering hope.
Exactly. Furthermore, agencies should ensure robust support systems are in place for these families. This includes incorporating victim specialists or dedicated liaisons directly into the cold case unit's activities, ensuring someone maintains continuous, compassionate communication with the families.
A dedicated point person.
Yes. And leveraging community-based victim service providers is also essential. These organizations can offer crucial emotional support, counseling, support groups, and practical resources for victims and their family members throughout the long and often difficult process of a reopened investigation and potential prosecution. It's about solving the whole problem, addressing the human impact, not just the crime itself.
Okay, final micro recap.
Yeah.
To quickly reiterate, we've highlighted the systemic challenges within cold case investigations, the crucial role of re-examining old evidence with new scientific standards and technologies,
Bringing things up to date.
the immense benefits of multidisciplinary teams, and the pivotal support offered by academic and federal partnerships.
Collaboration is key.
The Andrew Sadek case powerfully illustrates the ongoing human and legal complexities, from the ambiguities surrounding cause and manner of death to the agonizing fight families face for information.
A truly tragic illustration.
And all these aspects really underscore the vital and evolving need for truly victim-centered approaches in the long pursuit of justice.
Absolutely. The focus has to be broader than just the file.
And so our deep dive for today draws to a close. We've journeyed through, an intricate tapestry of forensic science, delved into the complex world of criminal investigation, and examined this persistent pursuit of answers in the face of truly perplexing unknowns. It's been a powerful reminder, I think, of how seemingly disparate pieces of information from, historical financial records a century ago, the most cutting-edge modern DNA techniques, all contribute somehow to understanding the problem more fully, just as polio would have us do.
Indeed. This deep dive has really shown us how, in the spirit of Polya's principles, meticulously identifying the unknowns, understanding the available data, and devising a comprehensive, albeit often lengthy, plan is absolutely crucial to tackling these persistent mysteries.
Yeah.
The journey from Andrew Sadek's initial disappearance through the application of advanced forensic analysis and looking at the ongoing institutional efforts to improve these processes, it profoundly highlights the dynamic and ever-evolving nature of justice. It's never static.
No, it certainly isn't. And the Andrew Sadek case, with its haunting ambiguities and the family's unwavering fight for truth, sometimes is such a powerful and enduring reminder of the very real human stakes involved in these investigations. It's a case that continues, I hope, to drive both scientific innovation and, perhaps just as importantly, necessary legal and systemic reform around things like CI usage and victim support.
We can hope so. And this leaves us with maybe a final provocative thought, something for you, our listener, to mull over as you go about your day.
Okay, leave us thinking.
If the future of solving complex mysteries lies not just in isolated scientific breakthroughs, but increasingly in integrating seemingly unrelated data streams, pulling together threads from overlooked historical documents, social media footprints, environmental data, genetic information, and in fostering radically interdisciplinary collaborations across law enforcement, academia, technology, even the humanities. If that's the future, what new unknowns might we then discover about society itself through this process?
Looking at crime solving tells us about ourselves.
Potentially. And how might that deeper understanding compel us to derive differently, to fundamentally rethink our approaches, not just to crime, but to justice, information, privacy, and community in the years to come? What does solving the puzzle tell us about the puzzle makers?
That's a deep thought to end on. Thank you for that insight, and thank you for joining us on the deep dive.
Thank you. It was a fascinating exploration.